Chapter 676, The Rain Poured. The rain was suitable for a water-type metahuman to kill. The entire world had become a water-type metahuman's home ground. At first, Whately, Greer and the others had come completely prepared. Whately had lurked on the ocean as a pirate for many years. For the past few years, he had never been wrong when it came to the weather. Thus, they knew that there would be heavy rain here. But they did not think that when rain fell, the water-type Greer had already died. When Lu Shu asked them whether they had considered the consequences before, the two of them could not understand. This young man was very strong. But why did he feel that he could defeat two Class B experts? The next moment, there was a creaking sound from all the houses within a 100-meter radius. The steel bars in the houses were pulled out by the metal-type metahuman. When the steel bars were in midair, it was as if time had stopped. Maybe you didn't quite understand what I asked you just now. Allow me to rephrase. Lu Shu smiled. Do you want to die? As he was speaking, Whately did not realize that all the invisible swords from Lu Shu's Sea of Qi had appeared behind Lu Shu. They floated in midair and started to merge with the raindrops. Sword rain had been formed. The lightning aura blade vibrated in the Sea of Qi. When Lu Shu was a Class C, he was able to face 5 Class Cs. When he officially advanced to Class B, his aura had practically merged with the heaven and the earth. He stood in the heavy rain. When Lu Xiu died, Lu Shu could not do anything. He had almost missed Zhao Yongchen. Lu Shu wanted to allow more Lu Xius and Zhao Yangchens to return to the land they had dreamed of returning to. He wanted to let them see that the trees were still green, the water was still clear, and the people were still kind. Lu Shu could live peacefully for 18 years because others had carried his load for him. Now, he had to become the one who carried the load. No regrets being born a Chinese? Becoming comrades in the next life? There was no need to wait for the next life. The next life was too far away. They could only fight all day long. But Lu Shu had always thought that he did not qualify as a leader. He did not have that ability. A leopard cannot change its spots. He did not feel that he would become a great person. He did not want to become a great person either. He wanted to be ordinary. Thus, he left the matter of becoming a heavenly king aside for now. At the moment, he just wanted to kill some people. The rain poured. Lightning pierced the sky. All traitors would die. This was the way of the world. Lu Shu was full of murderous intent. When the hundreds of steel bars rushed towards him, Lu Shu suddenly stepped forward and sprinted. Water splashed everywhere under his feet. The steel bars were about to send him to hell. Whately relied on his own physique and held the 2 daggers in his hands to clash with Lu Shu. The metal-type metahuman stood in the rain and controlled the countless metal bars. Whately and the metal-type metahuman had worked together many times. When they faced many enemies, Whately would protect and escort the metal-type metahuman, while the metal-type metahuman would use his killing power to defeat their enemies. One of them was strong in close combat and prevented enemies from drawing near. One of them had strong killing power and a large variety of attacks. The two of them complemented each other well. This was where their courage to hunt down heavenly kings came from. The metal-type metahuman broke into a cold smile. Countless metal pellets rolled out from his sleeve and landed on the ground. These metal pellets merged with the rainwater and rolled towards Lu Shu. This was his trump card. But at that moment, the sword rain suddenly slashed downwards like a punishment from the heavens. The metal-type metahuman had thought that Lu Shu could only engage in close combat and he only had to guard against the sparrow shade. But he did not think that Lu Shu's attacks would exceed their expectations. He did not even use a 100 invisible swords to kill Greer. Lu Shu had released the remaining invisible swords. He was planning to turn the ground the metal-type metahuman was standing on into dust. In a flurry, the metal-type metahuman suddenly realized that there was something wrong with the rainwater. It seemed to be able to rip through everything. All the metal bars that were supposed to be used to kill Lu Shu suddenly gathered above the metal-type metahuman's head, and formed a massive metal fortress. Ding! 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 It was only rainwater, but it could create such a clean sound upon impact with the metal bar. The metal-type metahuman's scalp started to tingle. If he had not reacted fast enough, he would have died. The metal fortress looked like it had been through an explosion after going through the sword rain. This was the power of the sword rain. When he looked at the young man, he saw two flying swords emerge from Lu Shu's celestial map with a roar. The two swords suddenly pierced through Whately's heart. Whately was defenseless. The two of them did not think that Lu Shu would have so many attacks. Although he was evidently an expert from the Heavenly Network, he did not use his flying swords at first. When Whately approached him, he realized that Lu Shu was a seasoned swordsman. Even his physique and his speed exceeded his. When they had thought that Lu Shu had used up all his attacks, when they had thought that Lu Shu was a swordplay expert who was strong in close combat, Lu Shu introduced his sword rain. But that was not the end. He could even control two flying swords at the same time. There were too many surprises tonight. At first, they were still puzzled. How did Greer, a water-type metahuman, die in the rain? Now, they could understand, but they still could not understand when a freak like him had appeared in the Heavenly Network. This young man had effortlessly fought two Class B experts. Whately fell to the ground with a crash. Lu Shu stood in the rain and looked calmly at the metal-type metahuman. Any raindrops that fell on the Chang'ing sword would be split into half. Suddenly, the metal pellets on the ground that had rolled to Lu Shu's feet rose into the air. They aimed at all of Lu Shu's joints. The pellets took the chance when Lu Shu had emerged victorious over Whately to kill him. The two Class B experts had experienced countless fights. They would not give up on any chances to kill their enemy. The metal-type metahuman knew that he was close to his death. Lu Shu was faster than Whately. He could not run away. At that moment, over 300 lightning aura blades appeared with a roar. They had formed an electric net that protected Lu Shu. All the metal pellets that came into contact with the electric net would lose control. Lu Shu deliberately positioned the lightning aura blades slightly further away. After all, it was still raining. Although the lightning aura blades had not come into contact with the water yet, it was still best to be careful. When the metal-type metahuman saw that even his final trump card had failed, he was in despair. Lu Shu laughed. "I will ask you one last time. You have hunted down heavenly kings for glory. Have you ever considered that the consequence might be death?" There was the roar of thunder. The sword slashed through the metal-type metahuman's body. That spring, the strongest form of swordplay had emerged. Chapter 677, Protect Coral. Bilma Desert, Africa. The atmosphere was hot and dry. If one looked into the distance, it would be as if someone had stuffed a piece of cellophane in the air. The air was distorted. A cross-country vehicle drove into the desert at a high speed. It kicked up a dust storm in its tracks. This place was off the beaten track. Even African locals rarely appeared here. The person sitting on the passenger seat wore sunglasses and held a magical standard weapon in his hands. It was as if he was carefully observing the movements around him during a patrol. Suddenly, they realized that someone was walking in the Bilma Desert. His head and face was covered in dust, as if he had crossed the Bilma Desert on foot. He wore a military uniform that was very similar to theirs. But it was the middle of May. The heat was unbearable. Who would be able to walk through the Bilma Desert? The two of them were Class E metahumans, but they did not dare to even imagine how the Bilma Desert was like. They guessed that this young man wearing a military uniform had walked along the border of the desert. The young man stood on the border of the desert. He looked at the greenery and vegetation in the distance. "I finally walked out." "Nya Ting, you are too much. making me walk all the way here to coordinate with the new team. The cross-country vehicle stopped over 50 meters away from Lu Shu. The two people alighted and came to interrogate Lu Shu. They saw that Lu Shu was wearing a uniform that was very similar to theirs. Are you a spy? Or are you a secret enemy agent? The young man was dumbfounded. Is there a difference? There is a very big difference. The two people were dumbfounded as well, but they continued to ask, don't change the subject. Who are you? The young man was silent for 2 seconds. A successor of socialism? Wait, can I ask you something? Where am I? Which part of Bilma Desert are we at? The young man evidently did not know what he had to do with spies and secret enemy agents. They were the ones who had come to interrogate him. He had no intention of provoking them. He was just passing by. The two people were evidently at a loss. It seemed as if this young man did not care much about them. Although they had drawn their weapons, the young man still seemed very relaxed. They did not know what to feel. We are in the north. What are you? I didn't walk in the wrong direction. Could you give me a ride? Lu Shu wiped his face and asked. Just send me to the sea. The two people looked at each other in blank dismay. Did he not see them as an enemy? Who are you? Why do we have to send you to the sea? As they spoke, they started to retreat. These two people were not dumb. The young man in front of him had nothing to fear because he had a strong backing. He would become even more aggressive as time passed. He definitely had backup. They probably would not be able to defeat him. They had to return to their base and activate the assistance team. There were times when retreating was part of a strategy and was not shameful. Lu Shu regretted everything. He should have used his water-type abilities to go underwater from the beginning. Back then, when he asked whether there would be anyone to send him to Europe, a message came. Only a heavenly king had the authority to assemble resources. Lu Shu could not stand this humiliation. Who were they trying to humiliate? In his anger, he started to trek on land. He had wanted to drive, but he could not. His poverty had limited his abilities. Later on, he thought that this cannot be right. He should have gone underwater. Although the distance would be twice as long, he was faster underwater. He would not be covered with dust from head to toe either. He had walked in the Bilma Desert for 3 days and 3 nights. He still did not have to worry about the climate, water, and food yet. He had been tricked. When the two people were about to board the vehicle, Lu Shu instantly came in front of their vehicle. He pointed his trident at the driver's head. Don't be like this. Peace. You understand peace, right? I just killed a few people. I don't want to kill for now. Look, you treated me unfairly just now. I am hurt. Shouldn't you make up for it? The two people were rendered speechless. Every time he spoke, he talked about killing people. Were you crazy? But when they saw the speed at which he approached their vehicle, they felt that it was best not to refute him. Lu Shu had wanted to use the Chang'ing sword to threaten them. But the Chang'ing sword was transparent. There would not be much of an effect if he used the Chang'ing sword. He sauntered to the back seat and took off the EO military uniform that he was wearing. A pile of sand dropped on the floor as he changed. After he changed into his t-shirt, he felt much more relaxed. He looked up at the sun in the sky before he suddenly took out his trident once again. He said, "Drive to the north. Don't make any detours." The two people had wanted to bring Lu Shu to their base, but Lu Shu realized what they were doing. Where do you think you're going? Just go north and we'll be done. Lu Shu now knew that as long as he continued north, he would be able to reach the Mediterranean Sea. Once he crossed the Mediterranean Sea, he would be able to enter Europe. You can ask them for permission. We have to return once our time is up. We can't be out for too long, the driver said carefully. Wait. Let me ask them, said Lu Shu. The atmosphere was now very amiable. Lu Shu leisurely sent a message. Where is the exact meeting place? Sardinia. Lu Shu looked it up on the map. Sardinia. It was in the Mediterranean Sea, north of Tunisia. Send me information on the members. Lu Shu sent another message. The information is highly classified. Only heavenly kings can access this information. Zhong Yutong, you never said anything like that before. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. He felt that Nie Ting was definitely behind this. If not, Zhong Yutong would not do such a thing. Did Nie Ting think that he would become a heavenly king after killing the 3 Class B experts? I am not Zhong Yutong. A reply came. They had changed the person in charge. Lu Shu did not know who it was. Lu Shu suddenly thought of something. He sent another message. From Yu Mingyu's distress, plus 666.
Ha! Ha!
So it was you. Lu Shu laughed coldly. This time, only Nie Ting, Shi Xuejin, Zhong Yutong, Yu Mingyu, and Li Xiao knew the details. The only person who would be free enough to send him information other than Zhong Yutong was Yu Mingyu. The 2 people in front trembled when they heard Lu Shu laugh coldly. But they could not understand his Chinese. Yu Mingyu had some self-awareness as well. How did you know that it was me? Lu Shu sent another message. Hurry up. What kinds of people are coming this time? I'm very curious. Heavenly King Nye said that you would recognize them. There is no need to send you any information. Yu Mingyu sent a reply. Lu Shu suddenly understood. So it was someone he was familiar with? If not, Nie Ting would not say such a thing. What are the details of this mission to Europe? Tell me the details. Lu Shu sent a question. Protect Coral and form the alliance. Chapter 678, World Tree. Xia Rensheng and the rest should still be at sea. All the members of the team had returned, except for Lu Shu, who was still rushing about in Africa. To be honest, Lu Shu was very disappointed with this trip to Africa. Leaving his official advancement to Class B aside, he had broken into a vault, only to leave with a pile of essential bombs. What was this? Earlier, Lu Shu had thought that Li Xiao may not want the essential bombs, but Li Xiao really took away 90% of the essential bombs. He did not know whether he would see the dignified Heavenly King selling essential bombs at the black market. He may even sell the bombs as wholesale goods for a lower price. He would probably be able to earn about $1,000, right? The team's mission was originally to go to Europe and form an alliance with some organizations. But according to the latest information, all their tasks had been cancelled. They only had to form an alliance with the deities. But the problem was, why were they tasked to protect Coral? Was she in danger? What happened to Coral? Why does she have to be protected? Lu Shu asked curiously. This is only a guess, Yu Mingyu replied. Previously, there was information that the foundation of the Bishop of the Department of Faith Theory had crumbled, like Chen Bailey. But we do not know how he managed to advance to Class A. I thought that it was impossible to advance once someone's foundation had crumbled. Lu Shu felt that this was very bizarre. Before he had advanced, someone had discovered that Francesco had appeared in the sacred burial garden of the Department of Faith Theory. Later on, someone realized that a grave had seemingly been unsealed. We have grounds to believe that Francesco may have taken something away from the sacred garden to help the bishop to advance. As for what exactly the item is, we do not know, said Yu Mingyu. Thus, I feel that the bishop had avoided fighting the puppet master and used indirect attacks against the saint, because there is a huge defect in his strength. Wait. Lu Shu interrupted him. Your analysis is very logical. I understand what you are saying. But what does this have to do with coral? Coral has a branch of the world tree, Yu Mingyu said with certainty. Which is the Gungner. Since Coral awakened the Odin bloodline and drew the Gungner from her spine, the members of the Department of Faith Theory have started to become very active near the deity's sphere of influence. It is too much of a coincidence. We suspect that the Department of Faith Theory wants the Gungner. What do they want the Gungner for? Lu Shu asked angrily, must they steal the weapons of others? The mystery of the world tree has appeared in too many ancient records. It is not only a weapon, Yu Mingyu explained. Heavenly Kingshire has analyzed that the world tree may have the ability to help the bishop to completely recover his foundation. But no one has ever seen the complete world tree, so we are not sure. So the Department of Faith Theory wants the world tree. Lu Shu acted as if he was very relaxed and asked, so what will happen to Coral if she loses the Gungner? Can the Gungner be taken out of her body just like that? She will die. When Lu Shu heard these two words, he was silent. Okay, I got it. There was a lot of pressure. Lu Shu sighed. The Department of Faith Theory had a Class A, although they may be on the weaker side, they were still a Class A. No one in the world had dared to provoke the Heavenly Network in the open precisely because the Heavenly Network had Class A's. But, if it were some other girl, Lu Shu would be scared. But if it were Coral, Lu Shu felt that he could not escape. Because Lu Shu was not quite sure why either. Life was like a multiple-choice question. But there were times when you had no choice. These are all our guesses. Yu Mingyu sent another message. Heavenly Kingshire said that this is to increase the interactions between you and Coral. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Were you crazy? What kind of sudden twist was this? In any case, the Heavenly Network was a large organization. Would they allow their members to sell their charms? Lu Shu knew that the Heavenly Network would not obtain information using their charms. But, if they could not sell a female's charms, they could sell a male's? Was this not sexual discrimination? So everything you had said just now was nonsense? Lu Shu sent the message with a dark expression on his face. It was not completely nonsense. Some of the guesses were based on facts. Everything is true. But based on our judgment, the Department of Faith Theory will not act rashly, said Yu Mingyu. Oh. Lu Shu held his phone expressionlessly. I got it. He still had to go anyway. If he did not go, he would not be relieved. Although he could not defeat a Class A, he still had to try his best. After all, Coral was rich. The cross-country vehicle continued north. The two people sat upright. There was a trident behind each of their necks. They did not dare to even move. They did not even dare to pick up the satellite phone that kept ringing while they drove. Lu Shu removed the phone and shoved it into the Seal of Lands. After driving for 8 hours, they finally arrived at the sea. The two people were very obedient throughout the entire journey. The driver stopped the vehicle by the sea. We've arrived. Lu Shu, who was deep in thought, recovered and said, Oh, thanks. How much is it? The driver was dumbfounded. I don't have any sort of meter. The atmosphere became somewhat awkward. Lu Shu realized that he had asked the wrong thing. The two people were about to spit blood. Who would ride a taxi while pointing a trident at the driver? This was too much. He was not a taxi driver. Even if he was, who would dare to turn on the meter? You stink. From IRC Smith's Distress, plus 666. From Alva. The two mercenary soldiers were very nervous. They had been obedient the entire journey because they knew that this young man was much stronger than they were. Thus, they were very afraid that they would be killed when they reached their destination. You two can go, Lu Shu said. He was waiting for them to leave before he jumped into the ocean. But the two of them did not move. Lu Shu was silent. "I can't pay you if you didn't turn on the meter." The two mercenary soldiers turned and left. They had met a crazy man. From IRC Smith's Distress, plus 666. From Alva. After the two soldiers left, Lu Shu jumped down from a cliff into the water. He dived into the azure water and swam towards Sardinia like a fish. Lu Shu felt a freedom that he had not experienced before underwater. This was his first time speeding away underwater since he had officially advanced to Class B. He had seen the speed at which Chun Bailey and Nye Ting flew at. Lu Shu felt that he was only slightly slower than them now. Chapter 679, There is no harm without comparison. He jumped into the water from Tunisia and went onshore to Sardinia in Europe. Had he escaped Africa and entered Europe, just like in the myths? Would his luck go up from here? When he thought about this, Lu Shu was slightly touched. As he was swimming, he occasionally stuck his head above the water to check whether he was going in the right direction. What they had taught during geography in school was very general. Geography lessons would not introduce places like Sardinia in detail. He only knew what would be appropriate to build in various geographical positions, as well as how to convert time zones. Thus, Lu Shu had no visual impression of Sardinia. He thought that Sardinia would be like Ko Chang Island. It was probably a famous tourist island that did not have many local people. But as he approached Sardinia, he realized that this island was much bigger than Ko Chang Island. There were countless fishing boats and yachts. There were many houses built in foreign styles, as well as coconut trees that were neatly lined up. This was not a tourist island. This was a standard, flourishing coastal city. Lu Shu had thought that the team from the Heavenly Network had wanted to secretly enter Europe from a secluded island, but this did not seem to be the case. The coastline was very cozy and pleasing. The water was glittering and clear. The rocks stood by the beach. There were a few caverns as well. Lu Shu saw a fleet of festooned vehicles on the highway by the beach. People stood along the two sides of the road and cheered. There were actors wearing various costumes and dancing passionately on the vehicles. The festooned vehicles were most likely decorated trucks. There was a lot of space to dance. Lu Shu took the opportunity while everyone was focused on the fleet of over 20 vehicles to climb on shore. When he emerged from the water, his water-type abilities dried his clothes. He was completely dry. No one would suspect a thing. The person beside him was shouting in a language that Lu Shu completely did not understand. He suddenly realized that this was not an island that used English. Were they speaking in Italian? No. There were many languages on the island. Sardinia had a large population as well. There was a rich diversity of races. There were 5 languages used on the island, while the language of communication was Italian. Suddenly, an enthusiastic lady grabbed hold of Lu Shu's arm and started to blabber. "Are you a tourist from China?" Lu Shu was silent. He did not understand her. He could only nod his head and smile. The lady was even more excited. "I love China." Lu Shu once again smiled and nodded his head politely and awkwardly. A young man on the vehicle started to play with a water polo ball. He had some special powers. He controlled the ball high up in the air, causing the crowd to cheer. Lu Shu was shocked. He had read some information that the ordinary people and the metahumans in Europe often had conflicts. There would be complaints every week, and there were public protests every day calling for laws against the metahumans. But from the look of things now, the ordinary people were enjoying a performance displaying metahuman powers. Furthermore, the performer was very handsome. There were even a few love-struck girls chasing behind the vehicle. Lu Shu suddenly realized that every story has 2 sides to it. Those who engaged in conflict with metahumans had their profits threatened by these metahumans. But not all metahumans ran amok. Thus, the 2 worlds were not distinct from each other. Rather, they were slowly merging and learning how to get along. There would definitely be such a process. Suddenly, the lady pulled Lu Shu along in high spirits. She was so touched by the young man's performance that she started to ramble on. "That is my son. Isn't he amazing? Do you like him?" Lu Shu continued to smile and nod politely and awkwardly. He nodded his head fervently. The lady suddenly realized that she had asked the wrong question. And Lu Shu's reply made her slowly let go of his hand. Lu Shu suddenly saw a name that he did not understand and was dumbfounded. He suddenly realized that he should not have nodded just now. But he did not understand what the lady was saying. He looked helplessly at the lady walking further away from him. He almost shouted, "Wait. Don't go. Let me explain." Lu Shu took out his phone and quickly searched the internet. There was a grand celebration in Sardinia. It felt like the New Year in China, just without the lion dancing. What was happening? Another fleet passed by. This time, a metal-type metahuman was performing. He did not know how much they charged for these performances? Or were the performances spontaneous? Or were the metahumans like celebrities who performed and gathered fans? It could not be. Lu Shu searched and found out that the next day was a holiday. Every May, they celebrated the horse racing festival. These people were rallying support for their favorite teams. Frankly speaking, they were cheerleading squads. Were the metahumans in Europe so down to earth now? Lu Shu felt that there were not many metahumans in China. Later on, he realized that it could be because the Heavenly Network had gathered the majority of the people with the potential for cultivation, to pass on their skills. An awakening would occur when one's potential was constrained and one's spirit lead to an explosion. The Heavenly Network had used the skills to release everyone's potential as their strength. Lu Shu did not know whether this was good or bad. At any rate, there was a low probability that these kinds of cheerleading squads would appear back home. If this had happened in China, where cheerleading squads chased after the dead, would you be able to bear it? Furthermore, this was illegal. If the Heavenly Network found out about it, they would come and say, "This will not do. You are not respecting the dead. Has the deceased signed the human organ transplant agreement?" No. They would then confiscate the dead body and burn it. The Heavenly Network was not wrong. The dead body might have been of the enemy who was killed. There was definitely something wrong with chasing dead bodies. Of course, there would be people with haunted armor passed down from generations ago. But who would sign the human organ transplant agreement so early in advance? These were just Lu Shu's wild thoughts. Lu Shu asked Yu Mingyu, "When will they reach Sardinia?" "They are on a cruise ship. They will arrive in a week's time." Lu Shu felt incredibly stifled. He had rushed over and crossed deserts to come here, but the team was leisurely taking a cruise here? The difference was far too drastic? How far was this place from China? Lu Shu did not believe that their cruise was of low quality. This was not far. Earlier, at the Bilma Desert, Lu Shu did not even dare to sleep. At night, poisonous animals like scorpions would emerge. He was not afraid that he would be injured. He was just disgusted. But now, there was clearly no harm without comparison. Chapter 680, Long Time No See, Coral. The revelry on Sardinia continued. But Lu Shu had no interest in it anymore. He had to spend the following week waiting before he could meet up with the new team and go protect Coral. To his surprise, there were a number of Chinese tourists here. While others were enjoying themselves, a Chinese tour guide was shouting through a loudspeaker, waving a small orange flag, "Hey, everyone! Here we see the famous horse racing festival of Sardinia, whose history can be dated back to." The tourists cast their curious gazes at the crowd. Some of them were pondering whether it was possible to take a photo with those metahumans or give them a touch for $10. In any case, metahumans were a rare sight in public in China. Of course, no one was rude enough to really lay their hands on the performers. At this moment, Lu Shu suddenly noticed something was wrong. He realized that the energy waves in the crowd were seemingly stronger than those in the cheerleading squads. He studied them using his peripheral vision to search for anything unusual. Indeed, those people were a poor fit in this lively scene. They were like indifferent spectators who failed to resonate with the joyful atmosphere. Lu Shu did a careful mental calculation. There were more than 10 metahumans along this part of the coastline highway alone. In that case, how many watchers were there in total along the entire highway? This was a planned scheme. Lu Shu had reached this conclusion almost subconsciously. It was hard to believe that this was a coincidental gathering of individual practitioners. There's something weird up. Lu Shu felt as if he had missed a key part of the puzzle. This was supposed to be an insignificant island for practitioners, but in reality it was such a thriving city. Moreover, the sheer presence of so many practitioners from various large organizations was suspicious too. What were they doing here? Lu Shu messaged Yu Mingyu, pretending to be casual. Are you hiding something from me? The situation here in Sardinia is strange. Why are there so many metahumans from large organizations here? At this moment, a man walked past Lu Shu. He looked up and, to his astonishment, it was Francesco. Lu Shu was stunned. Something must be going on since even Francesco was here. Dressed in his usual white cloak, Francesco navigated the crowded streets. His attire blended well with the exotic racial costumes of native Sardinians during this festive season. Francesco shot Lu Shu a glimpse when he walked past, which gave Lu Shu a chill. It was not out of fear, though, because Lu Shu had full confidence to defeat Francesco now that he was a real Class B, just like him. Lu Shu still had many secret trump cards up his sleeve too. Lu Shu was rather proud, actually. But his pride was not blind. He knew there was a Class A bishop behind Francesco's back. If Lu Shu got bullied by them abroad, no one would come for help, since Li Xiani and Chen Beili were so far away. But Francesco did not show any more interest after the brief glance. He walked forward along the coastline highway. Lu Shu let out a sigh of relief. He had been acting under Li Teng's appearance in Africa, and Howard's during the fight with Francesco. Hence, it was pretty normal that Francesco could not recognize him now. Lu Shu lowered his head again, acting as if he did not recognize Francesco. As he looked at his phone, he had to pretend that he was a tourist too. Yu Mingyu's reply soon came in. Some European noble is holding an auction in Sardinia, and the goods for sale include a sample of the world tree. It's scheduled to be in 2 weeks' time. The organizer comes from an influential European family, and he wants to trade the sample for awakening fruits that are best suited for the young generation of his family. Lu Shu was skeptical. How do you know that the sample belongs to the world tree? No idea. We only know that it's a 37 centimeters tree branch. Lu Shu was speechless. After a while, he asked, even if it's a real sample of the world tree, it's a loss-making business if he trades it for one fruit only. The most expensive power nowadays is the thunder type, but even a thunder fruit is not as precious as a sample of the world tree. It was easy math. The value of one fruit was equivalent to that of 1/3 of Gungner. In fact, it all depended on the quality of the sample, because not all world tree branches were as powerful as Gungner. He's not trading for one fruit only. How many? Lu Shu was stunned. 23, he has 23 sons. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. This time, it was China's one-child policy that had limited his imagination. If that was the case, it might not be a loss-making deal after all. Lu Shu asked, so are all small organizations refused entry? Only large ones allowed? But even large organizations may not have so many in stock, I suppose. They say it's okay to break the branch and sell in parts. Amazing. Lu Shu marveled. To him, the name a world tree sounded very sacred in the past, but now it seemed as if it could be chopped into pieces to make tea. Admittedly, it would be literally magical tea, but who would do that? It would be such a waste. Although the total length was only 37 centimeters, it was long enough for a short sword or a dagger. At this moment, a cruise ship slowly entered the port. Standing along the coastline highway, Lu Shu could see a group alighting from the boat. There was a unique air around them, and their build was rather tall too. The team was led by a girl, whose silver gold hair flew gently in the sea breeze. Dressed in a light green silk dress, she looked like a beauty from the most stunning painting. Lu Shu looked at her in silence. Long time no see, Coral. He had a hunch that it might be unnecessary to bring his team to Sweden when Yu Mingyu mentioned the world tree. In fact, their original destination was this island, so Coral would certainly be here too. Although Coral did not need any sample of the world tree, her visit was understandable, considering that she was the owner of the other segment of the world tree. Actually, Lu Shu could not even be sure whether they really had no need for another branch. For some reason, Lu Shu had a bad feeling about this. His gut feeling told him that things were not as simple as it seemed, though Francesco's and Coral's appearance was justifiable. Lu Shu returned to the crowd. Now that the main character was here, his job at the moment was to investigate the situation fully before the arrival of the Heavenly Network's team. In the meantime, he also had to figure out what on earth the Department of Faith Theory was up to. Suddenly, the wind started blowing. As if covered by a few layers of cloth, the clear sky dimmed in no time. Lu Shu turned to gaze at the sea surface. A storm was coming.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on the show.